it all started, the Alps. At first, though, these mountains evoked fear rather than pleasure, but gradually they were challenged, first by climbers and eventually by skiers. It was the beginning of a love affair. Many of the early climbers attempting to conquer those peaks were British, and skis often helped them in their task. In fact, for many years, skiing was seen as merely a branch of mountaineering. The most famous of these early British climbers was Edward Whymper. He was so obsessed with the Matterhorn that he attempted to climb it again and again until it finally succumbed, but not without a fearful loss of life. Gradually, the British obsession with climbing mountains blended with their passion for skiing. Sir John Hunt, who led the successful ascent of Everest in 1953, was the perfect example of a ski mountaineer. He often wondered about these two breeds. Were they perhaps, in reality, one and the same? Arnold Lunn, who would dominate British skiing and write about it with passion for more than half a century, also started out as a ski mountaineer. These early enthusiasts devoted to this newfound sport of ski running shared a passionate love of the mountains, and on May the 6th, 1903, a dozen or so of them sat down for dinner at the Café Royal in London to draw up plans for an almost unheard of project, the formation of a ski club. The dinner had been arranged by E.C. Richardson, who would later be generously described by Sir Arnold Lunn as the father of British skiing. He'd recently visited Davos, where he was amazed to find some additional ski tracks other than his own. It quickly became clear to him that a small, hard core of ski runners was out there, and that the formation of some sort of ski club might have certain attractions. At a time when skiing as a recreational pastime was only just beginning to be established, this was a bold and visionary step. These men were enraptured by the Alps, and 100 years later, they still are. It was, of course, imperative to try to keep members in the picture, and in 1905 the club came out with its first publication, the Ski Club of Great Britain Yearbook. The editor was not slow to plead for contributions. E. Rowton was soon reaching for his quill and ink, describing a visit to Derbyshire in November 1904.
The heavy snowstorms that swept over the north of England during the later end of November gave the Ski Club of Great Britain its first opportunity of arranging a tour at home. It was unfortunate that Mr. Wingfield and myself were the only two members able to attend. We indulged in some skiing behind a motor and went along the road at a very merry pace. One or two of us had some horrid tumbles, although nothing worse, luckily, than a shaking.
Soon H. Archer Thompson, an early editor of the yearbook, was describing an extraordinary ski club adventure to Montenegro.
We sheltered in a wooden shanty of which the ground floor was occupied by cattle. We found ablutions somewhat difficult, as the daughters of the house insisted on helping us.
Lord Roberts of Kandahar, a celebrated military leader, became inextricably linked with the history of downhill skiing. He donated a cup for a historic race which would be known as the Roberts of Kandahar, and so began the curious link between skiing and the Afghan town at the centre of the recent war against the Taliban. Curiously, Lord Roberts, who'd been decorated for gallantry in an Afghan campaign in 1880, when he gloriously relieved the town of Kandahar, had never skied in his life. But the name Kandahar would become synonymous with ski racing at the very highest level and inspire the inauguration of one of the world's most prestigious ski clubs. John Boyages, a former Olympic team captain, was a particularly keen competitor. He won the race no fewer than 3 times.
The Roberts of Kandahar was run from the top of the Schildgrat down to below Mürren in the fields leading down to the first funicular stop. I think what makes it so special must be the fact that it is the original senior downhill race on the racing calendar anywhere.
There are many so-called cradles of alpine skiing, but this valley is certainly one of the most important. Here at Lauterbrunnen we have skiers to the left of us up at Mürren and skiers to the right of us up in Wengen, and these early pioneering groups would become serious rivals. The juxtaposition of these 2 villages led to the formation of 2 ski clubs, the Kandahar, started by Arnold Lunn in Mürren, and the downhill only in Wengen. Ski lifts, of course, were still very much in the future, but there was a big breakthrough on the horizon. In those days, the British, who were pretty good at mountain climbing, were also rather good at building trains. They'd helped advise the Swiss on building their impressive new mountain railway system linking Mürren with Wengen. These trains ran only in the summer, but Arnold Lunn's father, Henry, a pioneer tour operator, who'd first brought skiers, including his 10-year-old son, to Chamonix in 1898, had a brainwave. By asking the train companies to operate in the winter of 1910, it would save skiers having to spend hours of valuable skiing time walking up to the slopes. And apart from a few skiing purists, for most skiers the chance to ride up and ski down was overwhelming. Almost 90 years ago, a small boy, a very small boy, took his first faltering run on the slopes here at Mürren. And for the last quarter of a century, that same boy, now a man of many winters, walked these narrow streets every winter's morning to do what he felt he had to do, go skiing. And as he approaches his 90th birthday, he is still taking part in one of the world's most grueling races, the Inferno.
Any ski racing is a challenge because, as we all agreed, you're always terrified before you start. Because unless you're going to ski as fast as you can, you're not going to ski well, and if you're going to ski as fast as you can, you're taking risks.
This legendary race, begun by the Kandahar Club in 1928, is said to be the longest downhill race in the world. The year after the inaugural Inferno, the race was won by the legendary Jimmy Riddle. Jimmy was a brilliant skier and a very talented writer, and he got down the course so quickly that when he got to the bottom there was no one there to greet him. So somewhat perplexed, he stomped off into the nearest bar, demanding to find a timekeeper with his skis still attached to his leather boots. Peter Lunn had come to live in Mürren with his father during the war. By now, Mürren was very much on the ski runner's map. Arnold Lunn, still hampered by his old leg injury, had been turned down by the army. Instead, he found himself organising accommodation and the daily schedules of injured British and French prisoners of war.
He was sent here to look after the interned. They were put in the Palace Hotel that then belonged to my grandfather. And somebody once said they were looking forward to a nice, restful time in Switzerland, and waiting for them was Arnold Lunn, determined to teach them how to ski.
In 1921, Arnold Lunn, acting for the Ski Club of Great Britain, organised the first British National Ski Championships at Wengen, the first national championships to include alpine skiing. The following year, Lunn set the first modern slalom, judged purely on speed and not style, through pairs of gates on the slopes of Mürren. All in all, with the formation of the Kandahar Club, the Inferno race, and the revolutionised slalom concept, skiing made huge strides in the 20s. And to record these golden moments was an artist who, more than any other, captured the spirit of the age. Alan Degville, known to all as Deggers. In 1923, a ladies' ski club, the first in the world, was founded at Mürren. At first, our British ladies met with little serious competition in the ladies' events in the World Championship and the Alberg Kandahar. At the first World Championships in 1931, Esme McKinnon won all 3 races, and the British ladies took 5 out of 6 first places in the slalom and 4 out of the first 5 places in the downhill.